Phoebe Soto here, and today we are talking about the Magician card. Continuing our exploration into tarot symbolism, we're just moving right along here. And this video is going to be about the overall general overview archetypal meaning of the Magician card. And then the next few videos will dig into more specific elements and the symbolism within the Magician card. So, to begin, the Magician card is number 1. The Fool was number 0. So we're actually now here at the first step of the journey with awareness. The Fool has either taken a leap of faith into something new or has just wandered right off the side of that cliff and their life has changed. The Magician, the affirmation that usually goes with the Magician is I am. And so the Magician is the manifestation card. However, there are many other archetypes that can go, like, just for instance, the Magician, magic, sorcery. So, but when we're talking a little bit about like the Jungian idea of archetypes and the Jungian idea of the psyche and the man's individuation process tied into the fool's journey, we're looking at the I am, the first step of awareness that we exist, that we are unique, and that we have a purpose, and that we can we can make our life into something. So it's related to the ego in the Jungian interpretation of the psyche. Um, because it's like the first step of consciousness, the first step of awareness. So I like to think of it as the first step of a quest. So, not to get cliche here, but think about if you're a Harry Potter fan and the problematic issues with Harry Potter aside, I'm referencing this just because it's a story that I know a lot of people know, and it's been compared to the hero's journey so many times. Think about the fact that like at the in the first book, Harry finds out that he's a wizard. Before he actually goes to school, Hagrid takes him to Diagon Alley to get all of his materials. Okay, he has to go get his wand. He has to go get his books. He has to go get his cauldron. He has to go get his owl. So, and those will go, the wand and the owl and the brooms, the various brooms, which he doesn't get that first day in Diagon Alley, but those are the tools that he will use on his journey throughout the entire series. That's what I like to think of as the Magician card. It's like, okay, holy crap, life has thrust me into this new role or on this new journey. Okay, now I'm stepping into that. I'm accepting it. I'm going to go get what I need. And it just so happens that the tools that the magician has in front of them is the suits, the four elements of the minor arcana, suggesting that we all already have those within us, that everything we need, we already have. Now, another very significant thing about the magician and another archetype, and why this leads to a lot of interpretations of it being the archetype of manifestation, is the magician's holding up that double flamed candle with one hand pointing down to the earth. With the other hand, this is very intentional. It signifies the philosophy of as above, so below, and is then mirrored with the fact that that candle has the double flames, as above, so below. So this infinity symbol was not necessarily intended as an infinity symbol by Pamela Coleman Smith. This is according to Waite, actually referencing specifically the relationship with Christ and that God is within us and we are a manifestation of God on earth and so forth. However, that infinity symbol, as more with that more metaphysical interpretation, stands with this card as to be reflected again in his or their belt which is, let me pull up this deck is made to look antique, and I love that about it. It can be a little more difficult for this demonstration purpose. So you see the belt is the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. Whether you want to look at the Christian iconography specifically or not, that absolutely is being referenced in this card. It is important, I think, to remember that Waite and Smith were absolutely intentionally introducing Christian iconography in this deck. So where you see symbols of Christianity, those are intentional. Because at the time in Europe, those are the symbols that would have been readily accessible and would have meant something to people. They were trying to make tarot more accessible to people. And these symbols, all like a lot of these representations, very much tie back to the medieval and early Christian use of symbols to mean things to the common person who was illiterate, who would have recognized the Bible stories from these symbols. Waite specifically says, reference to a line from the Song of Solomon, which refers to Mary and Jesus and the manifestation of God. Or, well, I'm sorry, Christian theologians have tied that line from the Song of Solomon, which is in the Old Testament, to meaning they believe it was a foretelling of the coming of Christ. And it's ego flos campi et lilium convalium. Excuse me if my Latin is terrible. I am the flower of the field and the lily of the valley. And as I think I mentioned in the last video about the rose and how the rose is often symbolic of Christ, the lily, the white lily, is also symbolic of the Annunciation in particular and Mary's purity and the angel Gabriel giving her that white lily. And so this is absolutely a referencing of that. Again, we're talking about, so whether you want to go with the Christian iconography or not, you don't have to go with that. So, but the card is the fact that we are divine beings, and again, that as above, so below, as within, so without, that we are manifesting our own reality through our mind, our feelings, our heart, our spirit. And so that was intentional, and those are very much what that means. And this under the rose sub rosa was very intentional, that the magician card refers to those hidden aspects that we as human beings are maybe some of us can tap into at a certain level, but there's always those unanswerable questions and just the pure magic of how that works, of how we can manifest our own life. So the other thing is that this card is tied to other cards in the deck. It's related to the ones and the tens of the minor arcana, which the ones, the aces, are the beginnings with the elements, and then the tens are completions of cycles. And so again, we have a definite intentional use of these symbols as to represent that this card is indicative of the beginning and end of cycles. The Wheel of Fortune card, another card that clearly in its symbolism references cycles, and in of itself being number 10 is, in this case, it's more like less of the completion of a cycle, but that point where the cycle changes. And so in a way, like an ending brings about a new beginning, as you know, this is kind of like that fate card that like we're going along and we think we're on a journey, and then oh, turns out we're being taken in a new direction. And then in another way, it's related to the Sun card, which is another card that very, very much talks to that awareness, the consciousness. This is the consciousness card. So whether you're very well versed in Jungian archetypes and the psyche and all that, and you want to think of it in terms of the ego or not, this is the consciousness card. This is the everything that came out of the unconsciousness in the moon card has now been brought into consciousness. The light is shining on it, and now we see it. It's awareness. And so, and you can even see how Pamela Coleman Smith has absolutely tied this back to the magician card. Look at the color. That is something that we'll look at in another video. The colors. This card is perfect for that. And so these cards are related to it as well. So I'm going to bring myself back up because I just want to end the video with like taking a look at many other representations, because we've very specifically spoken about the symbolism here in the original Rider-Smith Waite representation. However, as each artist adds to it the interpretation of the card, maybe the main archetype, that or the I am, or the first step on the journey, like maybe those all kind of stay, the magic and the sorcery and everything. But again, the different elements in a card can change and subtly influence the meaning of that card being used in a reading. So we have Matt Hughes, which is the Art Nouveau. This is his ethereal visions. And so, for instance, okay, he has chosen to make the infinity symbol look like a keyhole. So he eliminated the roses on the top, the sub rosa, but instead he kept that same kind of idea in the idea. This is very intentional, that the idea that you're peeking into the hidden mysteries behind the door through the keyhole, and the magician is your key to that. He has the four elements. He kept the red and the white in the clothing, and then he kept the Ouroboros here in the keyhole as well. So he really took that same symbolism and he just kind of reimagined it. This is the seventh sphere deck. So this is kind of like, I love their color palette. This is not my favorite representation of the magician, but this as above, so below, you can see how that has been reinterpreted by using above water and below water. Four suits are there. However, we've lost our sub rosa. I don't even think there's an infinity symbol in here. So, make that what you will of that interpretation. This is a card from a deck that is not Rider Smith Waite lineage. This is Dr. Papist lineage. So that's the French school of tarot. And so, however, I find that they're still similar. We have an androgynous figure dressed in white. We no longer have the red. We have the infinity symbol. We have the four elements. However, this magician is holding the wand, which is the fire element, and still doing the as above, as below. And I find here, instead of being sub rosa, the light coming down very much to me speaks to being divinely in tune. So, still connected to the other. Ko Karina has a divine feminine deck, and I love it. Beautiful. So we have our magician here. She has her infinity symbol. Same here. She is holding the wand, doing the as above, so below. She even has the Ouroboros going around her. This is the coin, the cup, and these are the two blades of the swords. And I think here we've got how this kind of resembles the phase of a moon, and your eye just wants to finish that circle. So that's a beautiful interpretation. This is another one of my favorites. This is the Light Seers Tarot. Okay, we are now here. We do not have the elements. However, we have the infinity symbol and we have it being mirrored here. See how she's done that, the artist? Okay, and we have the light being coming from the water. We have as above, so below. See how they're mirroring in the shape. We have the hands making that same, and we have the same androgynous figure that could or could not be a man or a woman or a hermaphrodite. In fact, they often refer to Coleman Smith's way of depicting androgyny as her. But I think that might be a language thing, that maybe we didn't use the term androgynous as much back in those days. Here's one from an ethereal tarot. In fact, I'd be, if anybody knows if that has anything to do with it, if that's like an etymology thing, let me know. Um, this is the Mage. This is ethereal tarot. I got it on Etsy. It's a very dark deck. I love it. This is by the same artist that, I'm sorry, I'm totally blanking. I know her name very well, but I'm blanking on it. But this is the same artist who did the Lightseer's Tarot. This is her Muse deck. Um, this is Erin Morgenstern's Phantom Wise Tarot, and I love. So again, a lot of the original elements are gone, but I love this like kind of Victorian fantasy, like Alice in Wonderland take on this storybook. Last Unicorn Tarot has Maybrook as the magician. This wouldn't have been my first choice. I love this deck. Don't get me wrong. Like anything that I would change about this deck still does. This is still one of my favorite decks. But I mean these cards are to die for. Um, but I would have picked Schmendrick as the magician. I would have put. I understand they had Schmendrick as the fool. Which I wouldn't necessarily put him as the fool because the story is about the unicorn's journey. So I maybe would have made different choices, but however, Maybrook here, he's the seasoned magician, so there's room for this card in this deck being interpreted instead of being as more of the magician who knows their craft. That's maybe how we would interpret that card. And then to just get completely different, we have the Forager's Daughter tarot, where she's gone with all nature symbolism. And so her interpretation of the card, you'd want to go read her book and really dive into why did she choose these elements of nature to symbolize the magician. Okay, so keep an eye out for the next video, which is going to dive into the colors and using colors in interpretations of tarot readings, but we will use the magician card, the traditional card, as our gateway to that with all that rich color, very vibrant. Um, so thank you so much. You can follow me on Instagram at soul.signs.symbols. But I would love for you to become a patron here or follow me on YouTube also at soul.signs.symbols. And if you want resources that kind of dive into this, please visit the shop. Or again, if you become a patron, you get those as part of your membership. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.